I got kicked out of my own sister's wedding. Not quietly, not through a subtle, "Maybe you shouldn't come." No, I was told to leave, face to face, right at the entrance, in front of the guests, cameras, and floral archways they probably spent $12,000 on. The security guy didn't even blink, just looked me in the eye and said, "You're not invited." That's when I held up my invitation, and there it was, my name, crossed out in thick red ink. And in that moment, I realized something. They never planned on welcoming me back. So I didn't beg. I didn't fight. I simply turned around, unbuttoned my coat, and let 4 silver stars catch the light. Let me tell you how I became the woman they tried to erase, and why I came back not for revenge, but for truth. I stood at the edge of the Bennett family estate, my boots crunching lightly on the driveway gravel. The house I used to call home was now draped in white linens and fresh roses. The scene looked like a wedding magazine threw up on a billionaire's Pinterest board. But I wasn't invited to the fantasy they were celebrating. And here's the kicker. I used to be Major Sarah Bennett, decorated officer, cyber intelligence. But none of that mattered once the headlines hit. Army officer under investigation for leaked intel. I was branded a traitor before I ever got a trial. My own mother, Margaret, polished, poised, always more image than intimacy, stood in front of press cameras and said, "Our family does not condone betrayal." And Emily, my baby sister, the one I used to make grilled cheese for and defend at school, she went on a talk show and said, "I don't speak to her anymore. She doesn't represent us." You know what's wild? Nobody ever asked me if it was true. They just decided. 6 years ago, I was stripped of everything. My rank, my clearance, my name. The Army cut ties. Friends went silent. It was like I disappeared overnight. I didn't fight back right away, not because I was guilty, but because I didn't even know how to process it. When the noise dies down and your life is in ruins, it gets real quiet. That kind of silence, it's not peaceful. It's suffocating. I left D.C. and drove west until I hit Montana. Parked my car outside a mechanic's shop, asked if they needed help, and got to work fixing motorcycles and changing oil. I scrubbed the grease off my hands every night, but the shame stayed. That shame wasn't mine, but I wore it like a second skin. It's one thing to lose your job, it's another to lose your name. But the worst is losing your family. A Pew Research study in 2021 showed that 1 in 10 Americans are estranged from at least one family member. You'd think it would take something major, abuse, addiction, but more often, it's betrayal of expectations. Mine was being the child who didn't fit the narrative. You know the kind of families where appearances matter more than people? That was mine. So when I got tangled up in something messy, they didn't ask for the truth. They asked how fast they could delete me. I was under the hood of a Ducati in a quiet Montana town when it all changed. Heavy boots approached, not the kind you hear at a gas station, military boots. I looked up, and there he was, Colonel James Carter, my old commanding officer. Gruff, no nonsense. The kind of guy who could read you without looking up from a report. "You think you're dead?" he asked. I didn't respond. He already knew the answer. He told me he was building a covert ops unit. Deep black, off books, no uniforms, no names. "You want redemption?" he said. "Then earn it." I never believed the accusations. I didn't say yes that day. But later that night, I saw a photo of Emily on the news. Dressed in white, smiling beside Ethan Caldwell, her tech entrepreneur fiancé, hailed as a military family success story. My name wasn't even a footnote. That's when I picked up the phone and said, "I'm in." If you've ever worn a uniform, military, police, fire, it comes with the unspoken rule. Your team has your back. But what happens when they don't? In 2019, a naval officer was wrongly accused of leaking drone coordinates. It took 3 years and 2 FOIA lawsuits to clear his name. His family? They never apologized. When the uniform gets stripped, it's not just fabric, it's identity. And when you're disavowed by both your government and your blood, it's a kind of exile words can't cover. Back at the wedding, I didn't come to make a scene. I came to show them what survival looks like. And when I turned around and slipped off my coat, those 4 stars on my shoulder gleamed in the Hampton sun. The youngest 4-star general in American military history. Uninvited, undeniable. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge. It's resurrection. That's where the story begins, but it's far from where it ends. In part 2, I'll take you inside the secret missions, the betrayals behind the headlines, and the moment I discovered my family didn't just abandon me, they helped frame me. If you've ever been underestimated, erased, or told you weren't enough, I want you to comment, "I'm still here" below, because your voice matters. Make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. You don't want to miss what comes next. You know what betrayal really feels like? Not the dramatic movie version with screaming and slammed doors. I'm talking about the quiet kind. The kind where people you love don't stab you in the back. They hand the knife to someone else and pretend not to notice. When I joined the covert ops unit, I thought I'd left the past behind. But my first mission proved something I wasn't ready to accept. I hadn't just been disowned. I'd been sacrificed. For money, for image, for power. And it was my sister's fiancé, Ethan Caldwell, at the center of it all. Let me show you how deep the betrayal ran, and why I knew I had to burn their lies to the ground. My first mission was in northern Syria, extraction of a U.S. informant held by an insurgent group. No flag, no backup, no plan B. We found the target half dead, locked in a concrete cell behind a decoy medical compound. He wasn't just some field asset. He was a Department of Defense contractor, classified clearance, working on AI defense protocols. As we carried him out, he shoved a small USB into my hand. "If I don't make it," he whispered, "this can't disappear." Back at our safe house in Jordan, I decrypted the drive. And that's when I saw it. Caldwell Holdings, confidential. The CEO listed, Ethan Caldwell, my sister's fiancé. The man smiling next to her in magazine spreads and Instagram posts with captions like, "Power Couple Energy." He wasn't just a startup success story, he was the linchpin in an international laundering scheme, one that funneled money from U.S. defense contracts into shadow networks tied to Gulf Nexus, a known black market syndicate. That scandal that ruined my life, it didn't look like a mistake anymore. It looked like a setup. It hit me hard. Not just because I'd trusted these people, but because I had spent years blaming myself. That's what betrayal does. It doesn't show up with receipts. It shows up in your own voice, whispering, maybe it really was my fault. And when the betrayal comes wrapped in family, it gets even worse. You don't just lose trust. You lose your origin story. Who raised you? Who taught you right and wrong? I thought I came from a family of patriots. Turns out I came from a family of brand managers, and I was the brand they needed to bury. Let's step back for a second. Did you know that in 2022, over 58% of whistleblowers who came forward about government misconduct reported being punished professionally and personally? That's not a bug in the system. That's how power protects itself. I wasn't even a whistleblower. I didn't leak anything. But once the story was written, no one cared what the truth was. They just needed someone to blame, and I was a woman, a soldier, a daughter they were tired of explaining. Perfect target. Months into my new assignment, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that press conference. My mother in a navy blue blazer, looking stoic and rehearsed, saying I was no longer part of the family. So I did something I wasn't supposed to do. I accessed my old case file through our internal intelligence system. It was messy. Redactions, gaps, disappearing witnesses. One name stood out, Staff Sergeant Marcus Vance, the soldier who originally filed the code report that got pinned on me. He had vanished weeks after my discharge. No forwarding info, no reassignment, just gone. Until I saw a blurry photo in one of our encrypted satellite scans. Vance, alive, sitting next to Ethan Caldwell, in an office labeled Special Ops Caldwell Holdings. That was it. I wasn't just betrayed. I was trafficked through a lie so perfectly planned, it looked like policy. Then came the knock. Ryan Torres, former private under my command, now a lieutenant. He walked into my office like a ghost from a better time. Clean uniform, fresh scars, eyes older than his age. He said, "I think it's time I show you something." He handed me a flash drive. On it? A recording. Not just any recording, a field tent conversation between Vance and another operative. "I didn't have a choice," Vance said. "Caldwell Holdings paid $200K to pin this on Bennett. Orders came from higher up." My hands shook. I replayed it 3 times. Because that was the moment I stopped asking, why me, and started asking who else knew. Here's the thing nobody tells you about betrayal. It's a kind of grief. But there's no funeral, no eulogy. Just a quiet unpersoning, where you're still alive but you're not real to them anymore. I had grieved for years without knowing what I lost. Now I knew. I had lost the truth, and I was ready to take it back. A few days later, Colonel James Carter called me into his office. He pushed a folder across the desk. It was stamped confidential. My name was at the top. Inside, a sealed memo. Promotion. General Sarah Bennett, 4-star, the youngest woman in U.S. history to earn that rank, and just beneath it, another envelope, ivory paper, gold trim, a wedding invitation. Emily and Ethan request the honor of your absence. My name slashed through in thick red ink. I stared at it. They still didn't know who I was now, but they would. I didn't want revenge. I didn't even want reconciliation. I wanted truth. Because sometimes the only way to heal is to expose the wound. In part 3, I'll show you how I walked straight into that wedding with my head high, my stars shining, and a flash drive that would tear everything open. We'll talk about power, image, and what it takes to be seen when everyone's trained not to see you. If you've ever felt invisible, discarded, or blamed for something you didn't do, comment "not this time" below, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and come back for part 3, because the reckoning has just begun. Imagine this. You've been exiled from your family, labeled a disgrace, erased from your own name. Now imagine walking back in, shoulders squared, 4 stars on your collar, and proof in your pocket that everything they believed was a lie. I didn't come to crash the wedding. I came to reclaim the truth. And by the end of that day, the people who cut me off would be the ones running for cover. The Hamptons always felt fake to me. The kind of place where even the grass is too perfect, where the air smells like designer cologne and filtered water. But that afternoon, as I pulled up 2 blocks away from the Bennett estate in my government-issue SUV, it felt different. Not magical, not nostalgic. It felt vulnerable. I'd been gone 6 years, but I still remembered every detail. The side path by the East Garden, the back gate Emily and I used to sneak through after curfew, the rosemary bush we planted for Grandma's soup. Now, I wasn't sneaking. I was entering as the woman they thought they destroyed. No longer a daughter, not a sister, not even a guest. A soldier with unfinished business. I didn't wear a coat this time. My dress uniform was sharp. Boots polished, hair regulation tight. The stars on my shoulders caught the sun like a spotlight. The security guards at the gate blinked. No words, just moved aside. The ceremony had started. Champagne flowing, quartet humming, guests sipping Perrier like they were part of a Kennedy reboot. And then I walked down the aisle. Not as a bride, not as a +1, not as a name crossed out in red ink. As a 4-star general with a flash drive in my pocket and a reckoning in my eyes. Heads turned. Conversations froze. A woman dropped her wine glass. I think she thought I was part of a security breach. Nope. Just me. Fully visible now. People who cut you off never expect you to come back stronger. They count on silence. On shame. They don't know what to do when the ghost grows teeth. So when I walked into that wedding, I wasn't looking for revenge. I was looking for recognition, not applause, not forgiveness, just a moment where they had to look me in the face and see what they tried to erase. Margaret Bennett, my mother, stood near the bar in navy silk and a pearl brooch. When she saw me, her mouth twitched. Not in fear, in something closer to confusion, like she wasn't sure if I was real or a memory. "Sarah," she whispered. "Mother," I said calmly. "I came to offer my congratulations." Emily turned around next, white lace, diamonds in her hair, her hands clenched, her mouth open, then froze. "And Ethan?" He went pale the moment he saw the stars on my shoulders, like he already knew the war he'd pretended to win had just restarted. I leaned to a photographer nearby. "You'll want a good shot," I said with a smile. "Not every day the U.S. Army crashes a wedding." The cameras clicked. And then I spoke. "I have a gift," I said, pulling the black flash drive from my pocket, "from an old colleague, Lieutenant Ryan Torres." I held it up so everyone could see. "This contains a recording of a paid confession. Staff Sergeant Marcus Vance admitting he falsified military data on orders from Caldwell Holdings." Gasps. Phones came out. Emily's voice cracked. "She's unstable. She always had issues." I tilted my head. Funny. Ethan didn't say that when he emailed me an apology 3 months after I was discharged. I still have the timestamp. And then, chaos. A man in a tux stepped forward. "I represent investors in Caldwell Holdings. Are these accusations credible?" Ethan tried to speak, failed. Emily whispered, "We need to call a lawyer." Margaret, she hadn't moved, just stood there clutching her glass, breathing shallow. This moment reminded me of something I'd read once in a psychology journal. People don't fear the truth. They fear exposure. In elite families, political dynasties, corporate empires, even some military legacies, image is everything. They'll protect the reputation even if it means destroying a person, because a clean brand is more valuable than a messy truth. But the truth doesn't stay buried forever, especially not when you come back with receipts. Later that night, when the guests had thinned out and the shock had cooled into wine-sodden silence, I found Margaret alone, sitting in her chair, staring at nothing. "What do you want?" she asked. I placed a folded piece of paper on the table, the forged education grant, the one they filed using my military credentials to pay for Emily's college. "You used my name," I said. Margaret stared at it, didn't flinch, just whispered, "You were always strong. Emily wasn't." And that was it. That's the part people don't understand about this kind of betrayal. It doesn't always come with anger. Sometimes it comes with logic, cold, emotionless justification. And that's what makes it unforgivable. Before I left, I crossed paths with Emily one last time. She was barefoot, mascara streaked, holding her heels like dead weight. "You came to ruin my wedding," she snapped. "No," I said. "I came for the truth." Her voice cracked. "You don't know what it was like growing up with you. Everyone loved you without effort. I had to claw for every scrap of attention." "And so you let them destroy me?" She looked away, and I told her the thing I had never said out loud. I almost ended my life that year. Motel room, Boise. I don't know what stopped me. Just a knock on the door. Maybe fate. But I was gone, Emily, and you liked it that way. Her mouth opened. No sound. "You didn't know because you didn't want to know," I said. Then I turned and walked away. Saying it out loud didn't fix anything, but it ended something, because the opposite of shame isn't pride, it's truth, and once it's spoken, it can't be taken back. In Part 4, I'll show you how Ethan Caldwell confessed, on tape, and how the FBI arrived just minutes after. We'll talk about justice, closure, and what it means to confront the people who sold you out. If you've ever had to carry pain alone, only to later realize you were never the problem, comment "Truth Matters" below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the next chapter is the takedown. You ever watch someone's entire world collapse in real time? Not on TV, not in a movie. I mean in real life. While holding a glass of champagne, surrounded by roses, with string music still playing in the background, That's what happened the night I pulled Ethan Caldwell aside and turned his billion-dollar lie into breaking news. Because when you've got truth, evidence, and timing on your side, even the powerful run. Let me show you what happened when the masks came off. I led Ethan to the old greenhouse behind the estate. It used to be a place of peace. Emily and I would hide in there as kids, planning mint for Grandma's soup, whispering about boys and dreams and nothing serious. But that night, it was war. The only light came from a single bulb above the door. Dust floated in the air like tiny ghosts. "What do you want?" he asked, irritated. I looked at him, really looked. Sharp jaw, clean tucks, $1,000,000 haircut. No soul. "I want you to see me," I said. "Not the woman you tried to erase, not the tabloid headline. Me." He rolled his eyes. "You're not going to prove anything. This won't hold up." I reached up, pressed a small button on my lapel. A tiny red light blinked to life. Recorder on. And then he said it. "You know what's funny?" He smirked. "I never thought the money transfer would get flagged so fast. Should have run it through Dubai first." Silence. Then his face changed. He realized. I smiled. "Thanks for confirming," I said. That's when we heard it. Sirens. Not distant, close, fast. 2 unmarked black SUVs pulled into the circular driveway. Brakes screeched. Doors flew open. FBI agents in dark tactical gear poured out, calm but lethal, moving with precision. Jackets marked Federal Bureau of Investigation in bold yellow. Ethan bolted. Didn't get far. They pinned him face down on the marble path. Guests screamed. A woman dropped her phone. Someone started filming. One agent approached me. Tall, lean, sharp eyes, buzz cut. He smiled. "General Bennett," he said. I blinked. "Langston? Didn't think I'd see you outside Black Ops." "Likewise." He nodded toward Ethan, who was now handcuffed and shouting about lawyers. "We've got everything. Good work. You know what justice sounds like? Not a gavel. Not a judge reading a verdict. Justice sounds like sirens and the snapping of zip ties. Justice sounds like lies falling apart in front of the people who once applauded them. That night, I didn't need revenge. I needed to be believed. And for the first time in years, I was. Back inside, the wedding was in shambles. The music cut out mid-note. The catering staff stood frozen. A groomsman vomited into a potted plant. I walked through the wreckage like it was a battlefield, except no blood, just broken illusions. One woman near the cake whispered, "Is that General Bennett?" Another man said, "I thought she was—" Someone else cut him off. "Nope, she's the reason they're here." Then came something I didn't expect. A few older men in uniform approached me, retired officers. You can tell by the posture, shoulders back, eyes kind. One extended a hand. "Heard of you. Read the mission briefs. Never thought I'd meet you." I shook it. "I wish it were under better circumstances." "You brought the truth," he said. That's when I realized this wasn't just personal anymore. This was systemic. In 2023, the Department of Justice released an internal audit showing that over 60% of whistleblower reports involving military contractors were quietly dismissed or settled without a hearing. Translation? If you're telling the truth about powerful people, they'll do everything to silence you. But I wasn't silent anymore, and I wasn't alone. Margaret stood near the stairs, still in her designer dress, but the pearls looked heavier now. She didn't speak, just stared. I stopped in front of her. "Mother," I said, calm as steel. "I don't need your love. I don't need your apology. But I need you to see me now, not as the daughter you erased, but as the woman who survived everything you refused to ask about." Her mouth opened, closed. The tears never came. Emily stood nearby, her veil off, hair falling apart. One heel on, the other held in her hand. "Are you leaving?" she asked, voice cracked. "I am." "You'll never talk to me again?" I paused. "I didn't come here to punish you. You made your choices. I just exposed them. You'll live with the echo of every lie you helped protect. That's enough. And then I walked away. This time, they didn't look past me. They watched me go. And for the first time, they saw me. Just as I reached the estate's grand front doors, a little girl, maybe 7 or 8, stepped forward. "Excuse me," she said shyly, gripping her dress. "I saw you earlier. I want to be like you when I grow up." I knelt to her height. "You be better," I said, and carefully unpinned one of the silver stars from my shoulder, placing it in her hand. She held it like treasure. I rose, turned, and stepped into the night, not like a shadow, like a storm that had finally passed. Justice isn't tidy. It doesn't come with applause, and it almost never comes on time. But when it does, it changes everything. That night, I didn't just take back my story. I took back my voice. And in doing so, I made sure no one like me would ever be erased again. In Part 5, I'll take you behind the scenes of the Pentagon hearing that cleared my name, the classified folder labeled Redemption, and the surprise confession that changed the rules across the entire Department of Defense. If you've ever had to claw your way back from something you didn't deserve, comment "I kept going" below. And as always, like, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell. Because the next chapter isn't just personal, it's national. I sat alone in a high-security room at the Pentagon. Across from me, 3-star generals, JAG attorneys, and a Department of Defense official reading from a file labeled with my name. Inside that folder, my entire life, shattered, falsified, buried, and now, finally, being put back together. When he finished reading, he looked up and said, "On behalf of the United States government, we offer our apology. You were failed." But let me tell you something. I didn't come for an apology. I came to change everything. The hearing wasn't like the court-martials I'd once feared. It was cleaner, colder, more sterile than emotional. But the stakes? Higher than ever. They weren't just reviewing my case, they were reviewing how an entire system failed someone they claimed to protect. On the table, my original discharge file, heavily redacted, misleading, intentionally vague. Right next to it, the real evidence I'd brought in. Audio recordings from Ryan Torres, financial fraud documents with my forged signature, a letter from Ethan Caldwell, dated months before his arrest, offering me a secret settlement if I agreed to stay silent. I didn't take it, because silence is how systems stay broken, and I wasn't broken anymore. Let's get one thing straight. Closure? That's something people say on talk shows. You don't get closure when your name's been dragged through headlines, your family disowns you, and your life turns into a ghost town. What you can get, if you fight hard enough, is accountability, and that's more powerful than peace. Because peace is personal. Accountability? That changes the game for everyone else. When the hearing ended, I walked out into the Pentagon hallway. There stood James Carter, my former commanding officer, now my closest ally. He handed me a sealed envelope. "They're awarding you the Presidential Medal of Freedom." I looked at it. "James," I said, "I don't need a medal." "You don't," he replied, "but justice does." And then he handed me another file. This one was black, marked Eyes Only. Operation Scorpion. In 2024, following a wave of wrongful military discharges and corruption scandals, Congress passed the Service Member Integrity and Redemption Act. That review started because of one case. Mine. I wasn't the only one who had been erased, just the one who wouldn't stay buried. My name became a spark, and it lit a fire under a broken process. A week later, I drove back to the Bennett estate, not to see anyone, just to close the loop. The mansion looked different now. No wedding lights, no laughter, just shadows on stone. Sitting on the steps, a cream-colored envelope, sealed in red wax. No name on the outside. Inside, a handwritten note. "I'm sorry, truly sorry. Emily." There was no number, no contact, just that one line. I didn't know if it was guilt or growth, but I knew it was real, and real mattered. Before heading back to D.C., I stopped by Ryan Torres's base. He met me out front, Boots dusty, uniform sharp, eyes steady. "You did it," he said. I nodded. "So did you." He handed me a flash drive. "Everything's backed up. The full version. No more hiding." I looked him in the eye. "You saved my life." He shook his head. "No, you saved ours. The whole damn system's changing because you refuse to shut up." And then he said something I'll never forget. "You didn't just clear your name. You gave us a way forward." Days later, I sat down with James in a private DC intel room. He walked me through the post-arrest debrief. Ethan Caldwell had confessed, fully. Bribery, fraud, political lobbying, falsifying military records. And the trail didn't stop with him. Multiple officials were being investigated, campaign donors, even former military court insiders. They offered me command of Operation Scorpion, a classified operation to eliminate corruption inside military-adjacent corporations and private defense firms. I asked one question. "If I say yes, do I get to do it my way?" James nodded. "You're not a soldier anymore, Sarah. You're the commander." They tried to end me. But here's what they didn't expect, that the woman they erased would be the one who redesigned the battlefield. It's not enough to survive betrayal. Anyone can survive. What matters is what you do when you come out on the other side. Do you stay silent, or do you rebuild the world that broke you? 1 month later, I stood on a bluff in Northern California. This was where I'd done my first field training as a junior officer, before the stars, before the scandal. I held a small wooden box in my hands. Inside, 4 silver stars, my old rank insignia. I traced each one with my finger. They weren't just symbols, they were scars, fights, prices. I didn't toss them. I didn't burn them. I left them there, on the earth, for whoever needed them next. Then my phone buzzed. Secure message. Operation Scorpion approved, requesting lead command. I didn't answer right away. I looked out over the water, wind cutting across my face. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't angry. I wasn't ashamed. And I wasn't afraid. In Part 6, the final chapter, I'll show you what came after, how I stepped into a role no one thought I deserved, why legacy is earned, not inherited, and what happened the day I finally forgave myself. If you've ever been betrayed but came out stronger, drop a comment below. I'm ready now. Like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, because this story isn't about revenge. It's about rising. I always thought redemption would feel like applause or vindication, but it doesn't. Redemption feels like standing in a room by yourself, realizing you don't need to prove anything anymore, that you made it, not because they let you, but because they couldn't stop you. This isn't a comeback story. It's the end of a silence that should never have existed in the first place. Let me show you how it ends. I accepted the lead command, not because I needed the title, but because I needed to be the one holding the scalpel instead of lying on the table. Operation Scorpion was launched quietly. No press releases, no briefings. Just a simple goal: cut out the rot. Within 6 months, we exposed 6 private contractors who had funneled Pentagon funds into shell companies. We took down 3 senior officials who had quietly approved fraudulent veteran benefits under corporate pressure, and we cleared the records of 27 former soldiers, each one wrongly discharged. Just like I had been, I didn't wear my stars on that battlefield. I wore my... And they spoke louder than any uniform ever could. James called me one afternoon. "You're not going to believe this," he said. Congress had voted to name an amendment after me, the Bennett Clause, a new policy mandating independent review of all military dishonorable discharges tied to contractor intelligence crossovers. Translation? No more erasing soldiers behind closed doors. No more ghost files. No more sacrificing honor for optics. I used to think that if I just proved myself, they'd believe me. But here's the truth. Belief isn't a requirement for justice. Truth stands whether people clap or not. You don't need their validation to be whole. You just need your voice back. And once I got mine, I never let it go again. A few weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. Plain white envelope, no return address. Inside, a single sheet of paper. You were never the villain. I just didn't know how to live in your shadow. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just finally saying what I should have said a long time ago. Emily. No phone number, no email. But this time, I didn't feel hollow. I felt free. Because forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation. Sometimes it just means you stopped bleeding. Not long after, I was invited to speak at West Point. Cadets lined up in pressed uniforms, waiting to hear from a woman whose name used to be synonymous with scandal, and now carried weight. I told them the truth. You can serve with honor and still be betrayed. You can follow every rule and still be sacrificed, but you do not lose your value just because others lose their integrity. The mission is still yours to lead, even when they try to take your name. Don't let them take your voice. I wasn't the only one. Captain Simone Phillips was accused in 2020 of improper conduct over a fake procurement trail. After 4 years of silence, her name was finally cleared by a tip unearthed during Scorpion's third mission. She now heads a veteran advocacy group in Chicago. I met her over coffee. She said, "I survived because I saw your story online. You didn't know it, but you pulled me out." That's when I realized legacy isn't about medals. It's about impact. One night, I sat on my porch overlooking the water in Northern California. No uniform, no laptop, just me. A secure message came through on my phone from a young analyst in the DC Intelligence Division. "Ma'am, I'm new to the team. Read your case file as part of training. Just wanted to say, thank you. You made it easier for people like me to speak up." I stared at the screen for a long time, then typed back, "Good. Keep speaking. I didn't go through hell so you'd be silent." And that was it. Not a full circle, not a perfect bow, but the kind of peace that only comes when you've walked through fire and come out carrying the matchbook. I wasn't broken. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was just finished. Because the girl who almost took her life in a motel room in Boise, she became the woman who rewrote federal law. The soldier they erased became the commander who made sure it never happened again. If you've ever been lied about, if you've ever been thrown away by the very people who were supposed to love you, if you've ever had to survive something you didn't ask for, I want you to hear me clearly. You are not alone. You are not broken. You are not what they said. You are more. And you don't need their permission to rise. So if this story meant something to you, comment below. I'm still rising. Subscribe to this channel. Hit that like button. Share your story in the comments, or just sit with this one for a while. Because healing doesn't start with a fix. It starts with being seen. Welcome home.